Hi, I'm Rod Reuven Bryant here with YPS Yeshiva Perchei Shoshanim's class on Noahide mitzvot and lifestyle course. I hope you have been enjoying the class, and we, of course, would like you to take time to add questions in the chat box and give me at least 24 hours to answer them. Sometimes the schedule gets a little busy and I'm not able to answer them. But thank you so far for the questions, observations that you have made. It really makes a difference. Also, we're notifying you to let you know that on Sunday night at 4 p.m., we're going to send an email out to you here just very soon. Every Sunday night, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to have a Zoom schmooze session with other Noahides in the world so that we can talk and throw out ideas and ask questions and even do a little short studies together. So it's very important. This is the second installment of Noahide identity, the Ger Toshav. Now, as we talk about this, there are a lot of opinions that go around the Noahide world about what's a Ger, what's not a Ger. And as we have analyzed in earlier or previous classes, there are many different types of Ger. And so it's sometimes can be confusing. And just as in the law of any country, there are nuances of the law that is very important for us to understand. And so as we go through and we enumerate the issues, for example, in this second installment of Noahide identity, understand that this is about legal issues and not about personal and emotional issues. These are issues that stand today in Torah law versus the state of Israel and its laws. So we'll try to balance those two together. And I'm sure that after the class, there's going to be more questions. So please take time to answer those questions. The question today that we're going to address is, when does the Ger Toshav status apply? The Talmud notes a similarity of language between the verses describing an indentured servant and a Ger Toshav. Now, let me share these verses. Deuteronomy 15:16. It says about an indentured servant, in the event that he says to you, I will not leave you because he loves your household and because it is benefit to him. That's one verse. The next one is Deuteronomy 32:17, the Ger Toshav. He shall dwell with you in your midst in whatever place he will choose from your cities because it is a benefit to him. Do you see the similarities between the two? This similarity of language called the Gezerah Sheva in the system of Talmudic interpretation indicates that the two concepts share similarities. In this case, the law of the Ger Toshav is similar to the law of freeing an indentured servant. Now, it only applies when the Jubilee cycle is in full observance. Maimonides codifies this qualification as law and is accepted as such by all later authorities. Since full observance of the Jubilee year ceased around 600 BCE, no Ger Toshav has been accepted in Israel since that time. Of course, this means that acceptance of a Ger Toshav is not possible in our times. As Maimonides writes, even if a non-Jew comes and accepts upon himself entire Torah with the exception of but a minor detail, we still do not accept him, quote, as a Ger Toshav. And a Ger Toshav may be accepted in the time when the Jubilee year is in full observance. When the Jubilee year is not in full observance, we can only accept full converts. Now, a 20th century problem exists. Non-Jews who reside in the state of Israel. We know there are plenty of non-Jews. As a matter of fact, during this class, some of you are going to be thinking, wait, I thought idol worshippers were not supposed to be in the land of Israel. Why are they not kicked out? Hopefully we'll address this soon. What does it mean by we do not accept them? This is an extremely important question, and once that was in immediate relevance, as we saw above, idolaters are prohibited from residing in the state of Israel. However, this prohibition only applies when the Jews have rulership over Israel and the non-Jews therein. It appears that this criterion is based on political sovereignty and not on any redemptive qualifications, such as the end of exile or the rebuilding of the temple. Given the establishment of the state of Israel, the prohibition of non-Jewish residents must again be forced. However, we have no Jubilee observance and therefore not granted Ger Toshav status. If this is the case, then how can any non-Jew resident or reside in Israel? Must they be forcibly removed? That was the question I asked earlier. To answer this question, we must take a closer look at the identity of a Ger Toshav. Becoming a Ger Toshav has three broad effects on a non-Jew. Number one, he is granted permission to reside in the state of Israel. Number two, he becomes entitled to support from the Jewish community. And number three, he is treated differently from an idolater in regards with many laws. A basic reading of Maimonides' statement of the laws pertaining to a Ger Toshav implies that acceptance of the 7 Noahide laws before Beis Din is needed to convey all of the three effects. This, as according to Maimonides' interpretation, is closed and sealed, failing to explain what is meant by "we do not accept." Quote, "We do not accept Ger Toshav unless the Jubilee year is observed," nor what is to be done with the mitzvot of a Ger Toshav. Rather, these are the mitzvot that are not in effect when the Jubilee is not observed. Some of them create leniency for him, that is the non-Jew, and in some create stringency. When the Jubilee is not observed, the non-Jew may even reside within cities in Israel. This is a leniency. We have no obligation to support him. This is a stringency. According to the Ravad, the inability of the courts to accept the Ger Toshav in our times is only for the purpose of obligating the Jewish community to sustain a Ger Toshav. Do you notice the difference? The Ger Toshav is not mandated for the Jewish community to sustain a Ger Toshav according to the ancient laws. The reason why is we don't have a temple, we don't have a Sanhedrin, and there isn't a redemptive sovereign government over the state of Israel. It appears that even without accepting of the Noahide laws before Beis Din, a Gentile may nevertheless live in Israel, provided that he keeps the Noahide laws. This is also the understanding of Tosafot and Rashba and the Kesef Mishnah. The Kesef Mishnah explains, however, that a careful reading of Maimonides reveals that Maimonides would even agree with the Ravad that acceptance before Beis Din is only needed for the sake of entitling the non-Jew to support. It is not needed to allow a non-Jew to live in the state of Israel, in Israel. Therefore, when the authorities conclude that we do not accept Ger Toshav in our time, it means that the Ger Toshav cannot bind the Jewish community to support and protect him in Israel. Does that make sense? Some people have jumped to conclusions when they hear we do not accept Ger Toshav as, well, they don't accept the Noahide to come in and to be a part of Israel and the Jewish community. No, it's about a legal aspect of obligation that the Jewish community should support the Ger Toshav. Yet, if acceptance before Beis Din is only needed to qualify one for communal support, then why does the Ger Toshav receive the other two benefits, and residency and as a non-idolater? Well, the answer is that these two factors, which are actually one and the same, are automatic. That is, automatic consequences of non-Jews' rejection of idolatry. They're not a result of the acceptance of Noahide laws before Beis Din. Recall that the purpose of prohibiting non-Jews' residency in Israel was this, that they are not idolaters, and the idolaters shall not dwell in the land, lest they cause you to sin against me and worship other gods. If an idolatrous Gentile wishes to live in Israel, there is no danger of him corrupting the faith of the Jewish populace. Therefore, the prohibition against residency should not apply. But succinctly, every Ger Toshav may be a non-idolatrous resident, but every non-idolatrous resident is not necessarily a Ger Toshav. Does that make sense? A majority of the authorities have tackled the question of non-Jewish residency in the modern state of Israel and have relied upon the interpretation of Ger Toshav, that is, that a non-Jew only needs to not worship idols to permit the residency of a non-Jew in Israel. That's the current state. We must keep in mind that the necessity for deciding in practice the exact definition of a Ger Toshav has only become pertinent since the establishment of the state of Israel. Prior to this time, Torah scholars offered many possible understandings of the Ger Toshav, as we will soon see in the third lecture on Ger identity or Noahide identity. When we examine the Noahide identity closely, you will find that there are legal clauses that prevent a Ger Toshav status today. However, in some local communities where a Noahide has rejected idolatry and Shutuv, has taken upon them the 7 mitzvot categories of Torah understanding, and walk closely in observance to them, they are permitted to be a part of local Jewish communities. Now, it depends on what Jewish community and what part of the country and world. In some places, like Muslim countries, it is very difficult for a Muslim who is a Ger Toshav, is a Noahide, to participate in local Jewish community just because of the risk of death and calamity within the community. And then there are some Jewish communities across even the United States and in Western countries where they might be accepted in one town with one particular rabbi because of their relationship and may not be accepted in another town because it's just not a comfortable situation. And until we reach, an apex of understanding between the non-Jewish world and the Jewish rabbis and the Jewish people, we're going to have this constant struggle. There's going to be the slight consternation from the Jewish world that is not trusting of the non-Jew that comes in their midst. Why? Because, as I've said earlier, many just assume they're idolaters. Well, we're finding out in this course, and we're finding out throughout the current history of the B'nai Noach, that there are many hundreds of non-Jews who have rejected Shutuv and idolatry, who've accepted upon themselves the mitzvot given to them by Moses from Noah, and now they are living pious, righteous lives, and should, in many ways, be accepted within a Jewish community as a Noahide. Now, that Noahide obviously understands his or her restrictions within a Jewish community. If they are a good student of Torah, they understand their place within a Jewish community. I think that most of them, all they are asking is for that local rabbi and the local Jews to help educate him or her in the ways of the Torah that apply for a non-Jew. And they would love to be a part of the Jewish community as much as Torah law would permit. So as we go on, the next class will be the third installment of Noahide identity. So I'll see you then. Shalom.